Welcome to the Energy Insights Perspective series from Delta EE. I'm David Trevithick, Principal Analyst and Lead on our Energy Insights research at Delta EE. By Energy Insights, we're referring to the consumption data and tools that residential energy customers can access and get value from. And this often lies at the heart of energy companies' customer engagement and digital transformation strategies. It's an increasingly important category in the energy transition, and at Delta EE, we have a research service dedicated to it. This series of Energy Insights Perspectives zooms in on one topic within this market. And today, we'll be discussing personalisation of energy advice for residential customers. We ask an industry expert to debate each topic, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Varun Nagaraj, Chief Operating Officer at Bidgely, whose company adopts a strong sense of personalisation for end users in its service to energy retailers. Welcome, Varun. Do you want to say a few words to introduce yourself and Bidgely?
Hi, David. Thank you, and thank you for having me and my company on your show today. Bidgely is a software company. It's a software as a service company. We sell our product to utilities, energy retailers, who in turn use the output of our engine to engage with their customers. So fundamentally, our product consists of an AI-based engine that uses data that we'll get into in greater detail in order to truly understand a customer, their behaviors, their preferences, and produce insights and next step actions that are appropriate for them. And then we also have a set of front-end assets that the retailers can use in order to deliver those insights and those recommendations to their customers through alerts, emails, web page updates, and such.
Great, thank you. So the topic of personalised energy advice. So this becomes possible with large data sets of meter reads or high resolution data. And this data is then processed and analysed to provide meaningful insights around current consumption compared to past behaviour, for instance, or progress towards an energy saving goal. Consumption can be broken down into its component parts, what we call disaggregation, and can be compared to similar homes, amongst other techniques. It can therefore become a key tool for customer engagement, and it helps develop the customer relationship by helping empower them to make better energy-related decisions in the home. So this type of insight has progressed a long way from the generic advice of old, like switching your lights off when you leave the room. And building on advanced data analytics, now energy advice can be tailored to where the big savings can be found in a specific customer's home or where their behaviour may differ to norms. They can alert customers of problems in the home or provide upsell opportunities for replacing inefficient appliances, for instance, and can improve behavioural demand response applications with personalised suggestions in a timely fashion. And all this can be delivered in a timely and channel appropriate message with an impact that's measured in euros for that home rather than an abstract benefit. But customer trust is critical in all this, and advice that is not appropriate, perhaps not delivered when it can be actioned, or is just plain poor advice, can set back the fragile trust a customer has with their energy supplier. So a delicate balancing act perhaps is needed. So Varun, I'll turn to you. Personalised energy advice holds lots of potential if handled well. Can you talk through the mechanics of this in terms of the triggers, the data inputs, perhaps the data processing and the outputs of the channel timing and feedback loop to help us understand the process and options available?
Sure, happy to do that, David. Before I start, maybe I just want to clarify a few terms because I will be using those terms as I describe the mechanics. Now, you use the phrase disaggregation. You also use the phrase insight. We then use the phrase recommendation, and I'm going to add a phrase called benefit. And I just want to string these four terms together so they are in context of each other. We look at disaggregation as sort of the most basic function. Now, it's a sophisticated AI-driven function, but in terms of the pyramid or a Maslow's hierarchy, if you will, disaggregation really is at the base of what gets done. It's simply being able to know which appliances are running when and consuming what amount of energy. That's essentially what disaggregation is. Now, built on top of disaggregation are insights. Insights are basically value judgments, if you will, to some degree. They are saying that your energy consumption is trending higher than it used to be, or your consumption for a particular kind of appliance appears to be more than what similar homes of a similar size and similar characteristics have. So these are sort of comparisons or judgments of doing better, doing worse, and so forth. Now that's well and good, but then the question is, what do you do with that particular insight? And so that's where a recommendation or an action comes in, which is, given this particular insight, here is something you can do about it. And that is very much dependent upon the context, whether it's part of a challenge or whether it's part of somebody's desire to reduce their budget. So you really need to know people's objectives in order to figure out what the right recommendation might be for them, because the exact same insight could result in more than one recommendation, and one might be more appropriate for you as opposed to for me, depending on what our objectives are. And the final part is the benefit of actually following through on that recommendation. So being able to quantify, as you said, in euros, the value of actually following through on an action is the last part. So now let me talk about sort of the mechanics of how we go from sort of nothing to disaggregation to insight to recommendation and a benefit. So the basis for all of this for us is really smart meter data. So we begin with ingesting smart meter data, which could be 15-minute interval data or 60-minute interval data. In a perfect world, everybody would have a home area network or a HAN, and everybody would be getting continuous sub-second data streaming in. But the reality is, I think a more practical way of thinking about energy acquisition is through smart meters, which means you're on a 15, 60-minute kind of a interval. So as smart meter data basically comes into the AI engine, you create a map. So from a mechanics point of view, think of it as facial recognition. Now, you and I have a certain set of pixels that describe our face. Software can look at us and basically conclude that, we are men and not women, or, we're men and not zebras, and that's basically creating a map of the face. So what a machine learning algorithm does with this kind of smart meter data is, imagine a heat map where you have a 15-minute reading of the amount of kilowatt hours consumed in 15 minutes on an x-axis, and on the y-axis, imagine a whole year's worth of data. That is a photograph of the house, if you think about it. And the machine learning goes to work on that photograph of that house to then derive what really makes up that house, which appliances are coming on when, with what amplitudes, and so forth. Now that is the starting point. The other part of the mechanics is blending it with other information. What was the weather at that particular time? Because that might explain certain things. How big a house is this? Because that might explain certain other things. So the disaggregation is blended or complemented with these other contextual factors, such as weather, such as square footage of the house. Could even be income. For example, a retailer might know if somebody's eligible for a certain special income assistance program, in which case that is additional personalization information that can be blended in. So these are different personalization attributes that the retailer may have access to. The retailer may have a churn model that they've used to calculate the potential churn probability for every given customer. That data can also be ingested into the machine learning that we're working on. So the smart meter data, augmented with all of this information, produces insights on a given house. What exactly is going on, and how does it compare against various contextual and competitive parameters? So that creation of the profile is really the step one of the mechanics of personalization. The step two, as you pointed out, is turning it into something that is consumable by the end customer. So you know what you want to basically present in front of somebody. I will come to your point of getting it wrong and therefore losing trust in just a second. But as you place something in front of somebody, you also want to place what an appropriate action for them might be. So here's where these other variables come in. Let's say there are two people who both have a potential to improve their energy usage. One of them is a renter, one of them is an owner. The renter is unlikely to be making any kind of an appliance purchase and trying to calculate a return on investment in an appliance purchase. That is just not the way a renter thinks. A homeowner would think differently. So the fact that you know that somebody is a renter versus a homeowner absolutely leads to the personalized advice that you would then provide to that person. So two people with the exact same insight about how inefficient their energy usage in a particular appliance category is are provided two different recommendations because of these other contextual personalization variables. Then to your point, the question is engaging them at the right time. So essentially making sure that you get the right alert in front of people at the right time, it makes sense. So if you're an electric vehicle owner and it turns out that you're charging your EV during times when the rates are too high, that is a perfect opportunity for a personalized alert being sent out to that particular EV owner to consider potentially charging their cars at night when the rates might be cheaper. So it's better for them, it might be better for the grid, might be better for the retailers, economics as well. So the engaging at the right time and doubling down on the key moments becomes key. If somebody has had an unusually high bill, that generally tends to increase the probability of churn. How do you then basically make sure either that event is not a surprise? So being able to project that a bill is going to be high and being able to alert somebody that their bill is trending high, but here are actions they could take if they're so interested, basically mitigates the damage that comes from the high bill being presented to the customer. And we know from our experience in retailers, that those are the moments when people think about defecting and changing over from one retailer to the other. So personalization allows you to manage that. Now, to your point, can the machine learning get it wrong? Absolutely. You always have false positives and you always have false negatives. And if there's anything that even our current crisis has taught us, it is that models are inaccurate. And that you can predict that infection is going to go a certain way, but it doesn't. Or you can predict that social distancing will help, and it doesn't. And so that is just a fact of machine learning and algorithms in general, is that you're likely to have certain false positives, you're likely to have certain false negatives. And those are things you just need to take into account as you engage with the customers.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I was going to ask actually about the current scenario under lockdown. So right now, of course, all our daily patterns are quite different to normal. We find our residential energy bills are higher than usual this time of year, which in theory is a great opportunity for personalised messages to help consumers understand that. But at the same time, as you've alluded to, there's a risk of playing around with the algorithms that therefore perhaps impacts on the data set that brings out these personalised messages. So getting a notification, for instance, that your dishwasher use is higher than normal and suggesting perhaps a fuller load, for instance, may not be particularly well received at the moment as people are using it more often. And now, of course, that harks back to those sort of customer trust issues. So what sort of energy consumption patterns have you seen that are different under lockdown, and how are you adapting to this sort of unique scenario that lockdown brings to providing personalized energy advice?
Fantastic. I'll break it into the insights and recommendations, because I think the algorithms and personalization plays out a little differently with these two halves of the package. We bundle the insight and the recommendation together into what we refer to as the next best interaction. And it's a very pithy package of information that says, because of this insight, we recommend you take the following action. The because of this insight is a piece of fact. We take the following action depends on the context, right? So let me talk about how the current situation is affecting the two things. So in terms of insights, we have seen interesting patterns, and I'll share one amusing tidbit with you, that people are actually taking showers a lot later than they used to. So besides people consuming energy in the aggregate, our disaggregation and appliance level disaggregation basically shows water heater consumption having actually shifted significantly to the right. So where there used to be a peak of water heater consumption and water heater energy usage happening at maybe 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., you're basically seeing it happen from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. or so, as people basically go about their day a little more slowly. We also have, we do cluster analysis. If you have a group of 10,000 customers, we can basically know which of them are stay-at-home people and which of them are office goers because of their energy consumption patterns. And we have seen a shift in that. We have seen, a lot of people who used to be office goers have now moved over to the cluster of stay-at-homes. And all of this is basically discernible just from the energy signatures. So the insights actually don't change. So right during a crisis, because the insights are a fact of the ground truth of what is actually going on, the trend might change, but it's not that you're going to modify the algorithm in any way, right? The algorithms run and the algorithms produce the insight that certain energy consumptions are trending higher or being shifted up. The sensitive part comes down to, so what are you going to do about it? So that's the reason why when we think of the next best interaction, we think of the insight and the recommendation. So as summer comes up with one of our clients, we could basically just hammer upon the customers that they're using more energy than they should. We could do our usual thing we might have done last year, which is, hey, take the following actions to reduce your energy usage. That would be extremely insensitive and impractical at this moment, in our planet's history. There isn't much people can do if they have to stay at home and their energy usage has gone up. The last thing you want to remind them is that energy usage went up and you're bad and therefore do something about it. But you can do other things. You can basically say that, hey, here's what your energy usage is. Learn how your neighbors are using energy. Or you could basically have a recommendation that talks about take a creative energy reduction action and upload a picture of you taking that action into this contest where we will basically pick the most creative action. So the kinds of things that you do on the recommendation side, I think, can become more playful, can become more supportive, and not necessarily be as blunt as perhaps they used to be during regular times. So that part of the algorithm, deciding what action makes the most sense, that's the part that gets, you can tune based on the context. Whereas the insight part, it is what it is. It's just a question of how you present it then out to the customer.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And quite frankly, this concept really is, is not unique to this sort of day and age, and it applies to a lot of change that might happen for very good reason in our home, like when a new baby arrives or a son or daughter returns home from university. So, I think the same sort of thinking would probably apply to in those scenarios as well. But setting aside those sort of current challenges, let's look ahead to sort of a period of a longer term customer engagement. So even with robust data sets and machine learning in place, there must be a danger of reaching a peak in customer engagement once a customer has made those initial changes in their behavior. They've established new routines, for instance. How do you keep engagement levels high through personalized advice once the consumers benefited really from those sort of quick wins that the earlier energy advice has already identified and been acted upon?
Right. That's a great question, David, and it's obviously one that vendors like us, have to think about and recognize to stay relevant, over a longer period of time. So I would sort of say there's probably two ways of looking at it. One is that people aren't necessarily looking for advice all the time. So I think that's one thing to remember, and I'll talk about that. And the second part is when people are looking for advice, remember their circumstances are changing or the environment around them is changing all the time as well. So let me talk about each of these. The first one, which is people aren't necessarily looking for advice all the time. Think about the time you spend on social media or people spend trying to just stay connected with their neighborhood. So there's a set of insights that I think are interesting. They appeal to our desire to learn more. In some cases, they appeal to our desire to be updated of what might be going on in our community. So being appraised from time to time as to how EV usage is increasing in my neighborhood. That 4% of the people used to have electric cars last year, and that number is up to 7%. Or being told that my neighborhood's collective energy usage is increasing or decreasing, and might we be interested in joining a challenge to reduce our usage versus the other. So there are plenty of interactions that can happen, or plenty of nuggets of information or insights that can be presented that don't necessarily have to do with, do this, reduce your energy usage, become more efficient. Right? So part of it is becoming more interesting in terms of surfacing things that people care about. So that's the first part. The second part is the fact that the world around a consumer changes. So if you think about all the things over the last 4 or 5 years, think about the move to LED lights. Think about now the increasing awareness of electric cars of different kinds. Let's look at potentially solar becoming more and more common. Over time, let's think about batteries potentially coming into play. Let's think about heat pumps. So there are always new technologies and new possibilities that are being made available to consumers. And therefore, being able to guide consumers through that particular change is important. Even with no new technologies, retailers offer different kinds of plans. So as a retailer introduces a time of use plan that is different than the time of use plans that were previously there, but they're also offering a tiered plan. And therefore the consumer now needs to make a choice between what plan might be best for them. These are all opportunities to continue to provide value to the consumer, help them navigate changes, whether they're in technology or whether they're in options in terms of what plan to subscribe to that they have in front of them. You know, one of my dreams is kind of this universal calculator, if you will, that a consumer interacts with on a regular basis to manage their portfolio of energy, to see where exactly things are going, what is coming, what changes are possible, does it make sense to actually invest in something new, a new type of technology coming or not. So you can be as relevant as a financial services advisor, if you will, with respect to somebody's portfolio, because the portfolio of financial assets, we assume, continues to change and somebody stays engaged with their financial assets. Why not take that kind of a similar view towards energy assets and energy asset portfolio?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, you know, our research does show a drop in engagement over time. So, you know, it's important to maintain that relevance. And you've alluded to, you know, how to do that with sort of new data streams, more granular data potentially, and through emerging technology and use cases, all offer hope for that longer term engagement. But it's important, I think, to consider personalized energy advice really as that long-term tool for customer engagement.
It has to, otherwise we're not in business.
Exactly, yeah. So in summary, personalized energy advice is not perhaps as straightforward as it sounds to start with. There is a risk of undermining customer trust, but when used appropriately in conjunction with the right data, energy insights, context, it can be a useful and highly effective tool in customer engagement. So thank you, Varun, for sharing your experiences and for adding to a fascinating discussion.
Thank you, David. I enjoyed our conversation.
Great. We're tackling other topics in forthcoming episodes of our Energy Insights Perspective series, so do look out for them. We'd also love to hear your views. We've been researching the energy insights market for many years at Delta EE, so do get in touch if you'd like to discuss further. Thank you very much.